Happy Friday, everyone. Hope you had a good week and are ready to listen to Chapter 2 of Robin Hood, How Robin Won a Silver Bugle. We'll get to that in a minute. First, we have our shout-out to do, and today's shout-out goes to Park Rat Metal Detecting. Great channel, a fellow down in Florida. Rob, you check him out, and I know you'll enjoy him. He's got a good sense of humor. Find some really interesting articles and objects in his hunt for treasure. And check out Park Rat Metal Detecting. There we go. All right, ready for Chapter 2? Let's get to story time. How Robin Won a Silver Bugle. The fame of Robin Hood and his band of outlaws spread rapidly through the country. After dark, few dared travel the lonely roads which led through Sherwood Forest. The Sheriff of Nottingham received daily complaints that it was no longer safe to travel in the neighborhood. These complaints came mostly from rich merchants and prosperous churchmen who had been relieved of their luggage and loose cash by hooded men wearing Lincoln green. The poor and the hungry, however, told a different story. They spoke of meeting groups of merry men in the forest depths, men who had given them feasts of venison and tankards of ale, and often sent them away not only with full bellies, but a shilling or two in their pocket. For Robin Hood's band of outlaws had their own private laws, strictly enforced by Robin himself. In brief, these laws were as follows. "Look you, men," said Robin, on the very first night they spent together in the woods, "see to it that no harm comes to any woman or child that falls into our hands. Yeomen and farmers, men who work honestly for a living, they too shall be our friends. Yes, and also any knight who is just and kind to the poor." Robin was probably thinking of Marion's father, good Sir Richard of Lee, who had pawned the estate of Lee in order to go on a crusade to the Holy Land with King Richard the Lionhearted. Marion, during her father's absence, had been left in the care of the abbot of St. Mary's, and Robin had not seen her for many months. "But," he continued with a grin, "bishops and abbots who rob the poor, sheriffs and their men who seize and beat the poor, chopping off their hands and hanging them, merchants who grow rich by cheating their customers, these we shall seek out. They shall help pay our living expenses." They helped so much, though unwillingly, that Robin and his men lived very merrily beneath the leafy boughs of Sherwood Forest, so life jogged happily along. One fine June morning, however, Robin found himself feeling a little restless. Life under the greenwood tree was jolly enough, but this morning he had a sudden longing to see something of the great outside world again. Along the roads which skirted Sherwood Forest, people were passing, some on horses or mules, others in farm carts, most of them on foot. They were all dressed in their Sunday best clothes, and they were hurrying towards Nottingham. Now Robin had not been in Nottingham since the day last winter when he returned through the snow to Locksley, and he was filled with desire to see the town once more, even though the Sheriff of Nottingham had put a price on his head, and it would be death if he were seen there. From the edge of the woods, Robin called out to a ragged old man who was trudging along after the others. The old man, terrified at first by the sight of the hooded outlaw, was soon put at ease by Robin's friendly manner. The old man's name was Hodge, and he had matted red hair. He hoped, he told Robin, to pick up a few pennies begging at today's great fair in Nottingham. "What fair?" asked Robin. "Where have you been?" said Hodge in surprise, "that you haven't heard?" And he told Robin Hood how no less a person than Prince John himself was visiting the Sheriff of Nottingham. A fair was being held in honor of the great event. There would be a fine tournament with knights in armor, music and dancing in the streets, and an archery contest in which most famous bowmen in all England would take part. Robin listened with interest. Afterwards he took Hodge deeper into the forest, gave him food and drink, and more money than the poor old man had ever seen before. Later that day, a poor old beggar with matted red hair, dressed in dirty rags, mixed with the gay crowd who pushed around the fairgrounds in Nottingham. When asked, he said his name was Hodge. For a while he stood beneath a painted signboard as though trying to read it, which made everyone laugh. For how could an ignorant person like old Hodge be expected to read? The sign said that a certain dangerous outlaw known as Robin Hood was wanted, dead or alive. To the person who caught Robin Hood, the Sheriff of Nottingham offered a reward of 40 pieces of gold, more money than the average citizen of Nottingham earned in a lifetime. Old Hodge moved on, mumbling to himself. Near a gate were a group of smart-looking men in leather jerkins, waiting to take places in the great event of the afternoon, the archery match. To the winner, Prince John would present a silver arrow and a silver bugle. Hodge joined them, which made everybody laugh again. A ragged old beggar like him, matching his skill against England's finest bowmen. Even Prince John laughed when he saw the ragged man standing among the stout young bowmen. He thought Hodge must be some kind of clown who had entered the contest in order to provide added amusement. There were 36 archers in all. They were lined up 6 at a time. The one whose arrow was nearest the center of the target had to shoot again against the other winners of the first trials. Then the 2 who were nearest this time would shoot it out for the prize. To everyone's surprise, old Hodge's arrow came nearest the center when he took his place among the first 6. Prince John burst out laughing. He was in a good mood because the last he'd heard of his brother was that King Richard had been taken captive on his way back from the Holy Land. The Sheriff of Nottingham leaned across his royal guest and said, "Pure luck, sire. The old fool wasn't even looking at the target." This was true. Hodge had drawn his bow and shot so carelessly that he didn't seem to be trying. Even on the second round, the old man hardly glanced at the target. The target had been placed further away this time, and the 6 remaining archers were all skilled bowsmen. One was named Henry, and he was Prince John's own best archer, known throughout England as a champion bowman. Henry's arrow pierced the black ring near the center of the target, and the crowd gave a cheer. 4 more archers followed him, but not one of them touched the bullseye. Then old Hodge drew his bow, grinning at his fellow archers. "This is child's play," he croaked, carelessly letting an arrow fly. Another cheer arose from the crowd. Hodge's arrow had landed beside Henry's, square in the bullseye. Prince John looked annoyed. He didn't like to see his own best archer equaled by this country lout. Perhaps it was still an accident, he thought. This time it was the final round. Old Hodge and Henry had to shoot it out. "Beat him, Henry," Prince John ordered, "and I'll fill the silver bugle with silver coins." "Your worship," cried Hodge in his high, squeaky old man's voice, "this shooting at such big targets is sport for babies. Henry here is a man of my own class. Let us peel a willow wand, put it up at 150 yards, and the first of us to split it takes the prize." "Then we'll be here all evening," Prince John sneered. "But if Henry wishes, only one shot, and the one nearest the wand wins." Henry, eyeing the old man with new respect, agreed. The willow twig was peeled and placed in the ground. From 150 yards, it seemed unlikely that the old man's eyes could even see it. "You shoot first, Henry," Hodge said, "for the light is beginning to fail." Henry thanked him for his courtesy. Henry aimed slowly, studying the tiny distant target. Then his bowstring twanged, and "Ah!" rose from the crowd. It was a splendid shot. Henry's arrow had actually grazed the willow wand. Then Hodge took his place. This time there was nothing offhand about his manner. He studied the target and tested the wind as carefully as Henry had done. He aimed and let fly. A shout went up from the watchers. Hodge's arrow had split the wand clean in two. Prince John presented the prize to him with a scowl. Hodge had to remind him of the silver for coins he'd promised to the winner. But when John unwillingly filled the bugle with coins, Hodge only grinned and tossed them to the crowd. John's face went red with the insult. "Stop that man," he shouted. "He must be a thief in disguise to throw my royal gift to the crowd. Seize him!" Now for some time Sir Guy of Gisborne had been watching old Hodge with growing suspicion. He grabbed at the ragged old man, catching at his matted red hair. The hair came away in his hands. It was a wig. The Sheriff of Nottingham gasped. Guy of Gisborne stared at Hodge until his eyes nearly popped out. "It's Robin Hood!" he cried. "Seize him!" Prince John thundered. Quick as a cat, the bent old man straightened himself up. His eyes danced with blue fire as he swiftly fitted an arrow into his bowstring. He pointed it straight at the cowardly prince's heart. "Take back that order," he said coolly. Prince John went white with fear. He had already seen enough of Robin Hood's skill with a bow and arrow. "Let him go!" he screamed in terror. "Let him go at once!" In the dusk, Robin Hood vanished among the crowd. Though Guy of Gisborne and the sheriff's men searched Nottingham, they could not find a trace of him. For Robin Hood had already reached the depths of Sherwood Forest. Around the bonfire that night, while a huge haunch of venison was roasting, he retold the story of that afternoon's adventure. His listeners admired the silver bugle and rocked with laughter. The one who laughed hardest was old Hodge, the real Hodge, whose rags Robin Hood had borrowed for the day. So next Friday we will read how Robin Hood met Little John. So something to look forward to. Hope you enjoyed today's chapter. Alrighty, now you probably want to hear the groaner. Well, this years ago, back when the Soviet Union was still together, it was the USSR, before things sort of fell apart with the glasnost, there was a train traveling. And on board the train in the same compartment was a young Czechoslovakian, a Russian military officer, a little old lady, and an attractive young woman. Well, the train was traveling along its normal route, and as part of that route it had to go through a rather long tunnel. The train entered the tunnel and of course all went black and dark. There were no lights in the carriage. This is before electricity. It was an old steam train. And after the car went dark, suddenly the passengers heard a kiss and then a slap. The young woman thought, "Isn't that odd that the Russian tried to kiss the little old lady?" The little old lady thought, "That is a good girl with fine morals." The Russian officer thought, "That Czech is a smart fellow. He steals a kiss, and I get slapped." The Czech thought, "Perfect. I kiss the back of my hand, slap the Russian officer, and get away with it." So there you go. So next time you want to slap somebody, make sure you're in a pitch black train tunnel and you know what to do after that. So hope you've enjoyed today's story from Robin Hood, and we'll pick up where we left off next Friday. Don't forget to wear red on Fridays for Red Friday. Remember everyone or everybody deployed, and we give them all our thanks for their service to our countries and their willingness to put their lives on the line for our freedoms, and including being able to slap a Russian officer and get away with it, right? So take care, my friends. Enjoy your weekend. Take care, stay safe, and God bless.